Next, next we will be moving to technical section 3. Will be led by Dr. Anil Kumar, Dean of English, Central University of Jammu, India. Dr. Anil Kumar, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon to all.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yes, sir, I can
All
see
right.
you. Okay.
Okay, right. So we had four speakers with us today, and I'm sure I just went through the title, and I just found that topics are very interesting. So we have four speakers. First, one is Muhammad Yassin. So Yassin and Dr. R. Jinu, Associate Professor, Department of English, Norulam Islam Center for Higher Education, Kumarakoil, India. So are you there? Yes, no, maybe, no? I think he's not present. So we can move to the next speaker, who is Sriram Rajeshwaran Singh, PhD research scholar at Royal School of Language, the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati, and is going to
Yes, sir.
read paper on Nitya Das, a study of its formation with special reference to the socio-political conditions of the 20th century Manipur. So all the speaker will have a time of 10 minutes, and we will, we will be concluding the conversation. And by the end of all the presentations, we will have discussion, right? So with you, we are going to start it. So yes, over to you, Sriram.
Yes. Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I am Seram Rajeswaran, PhD scholar at the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati. Today, I would be presenting a paper on the title Nityaras, a study of its formation with special reference to the socio-political condition of the early 20th century. So before uh, coming to the body, let's discuss the introduction of what Raslila is all about. In Vaishnava tradition of India, the Ras Leela is considered to be the most beautiful depiction of soulful love of Radha and Krishna. It is also a dance of divine love. Ras Leela is also a popular theme in various dance traditions and theaters across the country, sorry. And coming to the Vaishnava tradition of Manipur, the Ras Leela has become the face of Vaishnava dance tradition, which is also known as Manipuri classical dance. It was created by Vaishnava Maharaj Bhagat Chandra in 1779. During his time in the 18th century, he created three Ras Leelas, namely Maharas, Vasantaras, and Kunjaras, and they are performed at Sri Sri Govindji temple. And two more numbers are created in the early 20th century by a princess called Sanatomi, and it is called Nityaras and Divaras. The characters in Manipuri Ras Leela are Krishna, Radha, and Sakhi. The Ras Leela of Manipur is inspired from chapter 29 to 33 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And next, the objective of my research paper is to study the socio-political condition of Manipur in early 20th century. And the next objective is to study the development of Nitya Ras and to study the changes in the costume. Now, let us first discuss the socio-political condition of Manipur in the early 20th century. Manipur, as an independent kingdom, lost its freedom at the hands of British after a fierce Anglo-Manipur War of 1891. The political agent Maxwell was one of the most powerful officers of British Empire. And why we are mentioning him is that Maxwell, because he was the person who took the wife, the Princess Sanatombi, who was the daughter of the present king. She was responsible for the production of the third Ras Lila of Manipur in 1904. The interesting part of the production of this new Ras Lila is that this Ras was not authorized to be presented at the temple of Sri Sri Govindaji temple. It must be remembered that the other important Ras Leelas, which was produced by Maharaj Bhagat in the 18th century, were all present to Govindaji temple. The Nitya Ras, that is the new Ras Leela, which was initiated by this princess, was not given permission to be presented before Govindaji temple by Hindu priestly Brahmins because Sanatombi, Princess Sanatombi, having been married a British officer, was excommunicated by the Orthodox Hindu Society. It was also polluted to be in touch with the foreign conqueror since they were outside the Hindu caste. Even when the British authorities introduced English education in the late 19th century, the Manipuri citizen but they took bath after attending the school and they also washed their clothes since they were considered impure having had physical contact with the lower caste. Women education were also disapproved since it was suspected that the women would be taken away to English as wives of British officers after having been taught reading and writing. Now let us discuss the changes in the attitude of this new Ras Leela. The spirit of this new Ras Leela, that is Nitya, was against the tenets and principles of the establishment of the Hindu norms in the sense that Princess Sanatombi and her advisors felt that the normal Ras Leelas, which was created in the 18th century, were only confined to royalty and nobility. And she also thought that now the public should also be given a privilege of presenting the Lord's Leela, that is the Ras Leela, and also experience the presence of the deities on such occasion as the public wanted. Thus, Sanatombi's decision to present the Nitya Ras as everyday Ras was encouraged by her husband Maxwell. Thus, Nitya Ras was offered on 27th July 1904. Since it was not an official Ras Leela, it was performed in a more secular environment at the premises of the foreign authority at the political agent's bungalow, that is, the present governor's residence. A huge pavilion was created in the courtyard of the foreign authority, and many Ras teachers, artists, and personnel involved surprisingly were mainly from palatial environment. Hence, the dynamics of Hindu orthodoxy, social admixture of concurring races, divide amongst the lineage of the royal rulers, and overall anti-British and pro-British sentiments must have combined to make this presentation one of the most finest artistic moments of the early 20th century. And there was several changes in the costume as compared to the Ras Leelas created in the 18th century. Now let us discuss about the changes in the costume. Um, During the presentation of this new Ras Leela, uh, the Koktum beef dessert, which is very orthodox and conservative, was being discarded. A thin imaginative design or headgear with a veil over the face of the lady performers and breast fastening strap to deny an overt sexual motivation over the female form was specially designed with a fresh inafi replacing the tabagyat, and the veil covering the face was removed. Thus, Nityaras was bequeathed to be to be subsequent generation as an everyday Ras which could be pursued and presented by the whole public. And the people and the design principle in the Orthodox costume were also freed from the earlier inhibitions. Thus, till date, we have five Ras Leelas in Manipur, and uh, and all these Ras Leelas have their own uniqueness and nuances. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sri Ram Rajeshwaram. So it was wonderful insight on uh, the socio-cultural dynamics of Manipur culture, and in fact, you spoke on the Ras Leela and its art forms. So how historically it had changed, and how it is now being seen in 20th century. So just a little bit curious to know, maybe just is it a right to speak on, or let us say, is it a right to validate
Hello?
Ras Leela
Pardon, sir?
without
Hello?
well, you spoke, yes, is it audible?
Hello?
Okay, no problem. So we will invite questions later on, right? So let us move to the next speaker. So I was just a
Hello?
little bit, is it audible? Is it audible? No? All right, so we will move to the next presenter. Let us take a look on next paper.
Hello, sir.
Sonali
Am I
Bhattacharjee.
audible?
Yes, you are audible. I think we are not audible to you. Okay, so we are going to move to the next presenter, Sonali Bhattacharjee. She is PhD research scholar in Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, India. And she's going to speak on introspection of partition history through memory, a study of Anita Rao Badami's Can You Hear the Nightbird Call? So over to you, Sonali.
Good afternoon, sir, everyone. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone who is sharing the platform with me. Myself, Sonali Bhattacharjee, a PhD research scholar in Banaras Hindu University. So I'm going to present my paper on introspection of partition history through memory, a study of Anita Rao Badami's Can You Hear the Nightbird Call? Memory studies is a broad interdisciplinary endeavor encouraging contributions and collaborations from several other disciplines like cultural history, psychology, sociology, medical humanities, political philosophy. Tim Woods and Peter Middleton describes, I quote, memory is a means of overcoming the limitations of the human condition as it is understood in contemporary culture by making the past appear once again in the present, despite its temporal and possibly spatial distance. Literature serves as the mirror to delve inside the psyche of the women, victims who survived the partition, and brings forth a new perspective that fails to find a reflection in the official historiographies. The scope of partition literature can be expanded to provoke actions of recollections, lamentations, nostalgia, and reminiscing. The traumatic experiences of dislocated women in refugee camps, the physical and mental agony of the Holocaust barely finds any mention in the written history. Oral testimonies and memory provides an alternate perspective of the masses that is much different from official historiographies. The trauma of these victims was so intense that explicit and coherent articulation was impossible. Memory loss functioned as an excellent way of coping and surviving the trauma of partition. Memory plays a vital role in establishing a different discourse of history. Millions of traumatized, muted voices, through the writer's proficient use of memory, deals with the present with regard to the past and articulates their harrowing experiences. Reminiscence, nostalgia, retrospection are effective therapeutic methods of recovering and assembling the incoherent, fragmented personal memories and reconstructing the personal identities. Memory also plays a crucial role in interaction and validation of images of the past. Asnan, considering the vital role of memory in building social relationships, observes it as a backbone of identity. Kenneth Gregan defines it as a form of social skill. There has been an increase in female scholarships across the globe in areas of collective and cultural memory. A marriage of transitory return to disoriented past and the vocalization of complicated association in human consciousness between past, present, and future is achieved by memory. Over time, thinkers have given a new dimension to memory studies. Mary Warnock differentiates between conscious memory and habit memory. Warnock describes conscious memory as a kind of memory that must be thought of as mental, not physical, for it must be experienced and experienced privately within the mind of each one of us. While habit memory, on the other hand, is the capacity to grasp and retain skills that are regularly used in our day-to-day life. Both these memories are dependent on the other and works in collaboration with each other. Memory studies has renewed the attention of philosophers and thinkers because of its complex, undefined human nature, and it serves as an important tool to explore cultural and collective memory. Forced eviction and spatial displacement, cultural and linguistic uprooting are connected to dislocation, memory, trauma, identity crisis, and alienation, both at community and personal level. Memory acts as a tool or medium to re-experience and retrieve the trauma of the catastrophic event. The geographic fragmentation has redefined the lives of women who have been the obliterated, marginalized, and vulnerable section of society. The geographical, temporal, and cultural dislocation resulted in disillusionment, pain, sexual assault, abduction, forced religious conversion, prostitution, and non-consensual marriages was in turn unfathomable. In her seminal work, The Other Side of Violence, Urvashi Bhuteria writes, I quote, "Many were paraded naked in the streets, several had their breasts cut off, their bodies were tattooed with marks of other religion. These events left an indelible scar in their memory, which later found an outlet through these fragmentary, incoherent recollections." Indo-Canadian writer Anita Rao Badami's novel, Can You Hear the Nightbird Call?, delineates the excruciating experiences of three women, BBG, Leela, and Nimo, through the memory recordings of BBG's mind, ranging from the traumatic violence during the partition, the Komagata Maru incident, to the demand of an independent six-state Khalistan, and finally the bombing of Air India 182 flight. All the incidents are recorded and recollected through BBG's memory in a series of flashbacks, and she is the representative voice of all migrants. The novel portrays the distressing traumatic experiences of women during the cataclysmic fragmentation. Effectively using the tool of memory, the novel explains the yearning among the characters to establish a sense of identity. Sharanjit Kaur, popularly known as BBG, calls herself a greedy poor girl who always looked for bright opportunities. She and her poverty-stricken family lived in a small village called Panjor in Western Punjab, comprising of Sikhs and Hindus. I quote, "Her memories began from the time when she was 6-year-old living in a village called Panjor." BBG received attention from Khushwant Singh, who had indeed come to see Kanwar. She marries him and emigrates to Canada. BBG's father, Harjot Singh, went to Canada, dreaming of ample opportunities and success, but returned rejected. And finally, her migration, BBG's migration to Vancouver. When she landed over there, she thought, I quote, she had overcome space and time and won the country that had turned her father away all these years ago. Ever since it was Kanwar, her sister's letter to BBG about their father. Kanwar, her sister's letter to BBG. Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are
Kanwar,
audible.
her
Please go
sister's
on.
letter to BBG about their mother's demise, the news of Kanwar's pregnancy and motherhood, the despair, terror, and bafflement that she had hold in her heart, jolted BBG's memory and made her reminisce her plays, dear ones, and her obscure past. The vivisection of India and Pakistan had created a sense of anxiety, pride, and trepidation in Kanwar's heart that was well expressed in her letter. BBG's reply to Kanwar was not reciprocated, and she kept yearning for her dear ones, her past, and her village Panjor. Racial discrimination and patriarchal oppression has also been delineated by Badami through Leela's life. Leela, another character of this novel, is always referred to as half and half by her cousins, who is born to Hari Shastri and Roja skewers. Rosa was disliked by Hari's family. The same antipathy and dislike was suffered by Leela after her mother's demise. Towards the end of the novel, a series of events ranging from the proclamation of emergency in 1975 to the Golden Temple attack, assassination of Indira Gandhi, the attack on Sikhs, and the sabotage of Air India Flight 182 in 1985 puts all the characters in turmoil and confusion. The assault on Sikhs endangered the life of Nimo, who is Kanwar, BBG's sister's daughter, and her family, resulting in traumatic recollections and remembrance of the partition experiences that Nemo has experienced as a child and that has left an indelible mark on her psyche. Acts of memory are thus acts of performance, representation, and interpretation. They acquire agent and specific contents. They can be conscious and deliberate. At the same time, this is certainly true in the case of trauma. They can be voluntary, repetitious, and obsessive. Though Nemo had survived the atrocities of partition and its aftermath, yet her deep-rooted scars of her harrowing past kept haunting her and kept reminding her of her mother's agony during the partition riots. But she had no option but to accept the reality and move on in life. The novel portrays how innocent, guiltless souls have been subjected to outrageous and horrendous acts of violence, thereby exposing the meaninglessness and futility of violence. It highlights the fact the transmission of cultural memory is through the body and voice of an individual, mostly through the evidence or affirmation of a witness. It is in the society that people normally acquire their memories, and it is also in society that they recall, recognize, and localize their memories. Nemo, the daughter of Kanwar and Pardeep Singh, had lost all her members during the partition, and she has a very obscure, incoherent memory of her missing, her journey to the refugee camp in Delhi, her recovery, and her final adoption by a Sikh family. Nemo partially remembers of her mother's idea to hide her in a wooden baroli and to be silent till she arrived to rescue her. Nemo's fragmentary memory recalls how the footsteps and harsh male voices had made her mother scream like a stray dog, breathing its last in the trench behind. Kathy Carruth, in Unclaimed Experiences, opines, I quote, "As modern neurobiologists point out, the repetition of the traumatic experience in the flashback can itself be re-traumatizing, if not life-threatening. It is at least threatening to the chemical structure of the brain and can ultimately lead to deterioration." The disastrous aftermath of partition on the lives of these three innocent women, especially on BBG and Nemo, disturbed the vigor and happiness of their lives. The everlasting scar on their memory made it impossible for them to neither negotiate nor reconcile with the reality. Like the Jewish Holocaust, partition too is beyond the potential of narratives to represent and express. Badami, as a writer, has captured the dehumanization, the dislocation and victimization of innocent characters during the vivisection of the nation and its serious repercussions. Badami's novel delineates that there is no escape from the past. It is intertwined with the self, occupying divergent worlds and forming new cultures. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali. So it was a wonderful insight. In fact, you have, beautifully presented the idea of, trauma and how, past doesn't, you cannot escape from the past, and therefore threw light on the psychological trauma with the habit, memory, and consciousness, how they work together, and how through cultural insight and geographical insight and dislocation, how does it keeps on haunting the person who actually goes through, and the novel which you have taken. So it beautifully throws light on the idea of cultural memory, right? So we will have discussion later, but we will just move to the next speaker. So we will invite the questions after the after this paper, right? So let us move on to the next
Okay, thank you, sir.
reader, presenter. Yeah. Next presenter, Venkateshwar Pradhan. He's a research scholar in Central University of Rajasthan, Bandashiri, Ajmer, Rajasthan, India, and he's going to, reflect upon the novel written by Arvind Adiga, Amnesty. So he's going to speak on it. Yes, over to you, Venkateshwar.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Venkateshwar Pradhan. I'm a research scholar in Central University of Rajasthan. And the title of my paper is Re-Ethication and the Politics of Non-Recognition, an Analysis of Arvind Adiga's Amnesty. So the concept of reification emerged in George Lucas's History and Class Consciousness, published in 1923. In this particular book, Lucas tries to revision the Marxist theory, the deliberate failure of orthodox Marxism in the past decade to initiate a proper revolution of the working class compelled thinkers like Lucas to rethink the cons and flaws of Marxism. So the concept of reification is a revision or an endeavor to reinterpret the Marxist concept of commodity fetishism. So the concept of commodity fetishism talks about the growing infatuation towards commodities or products in the capitalist society. And this particular concept sort of points out the objectification of human labor. But the concept of reification extends this discussion to the context of human relationship in capitalist society. So Lucas in reification tells us that uh, the manner in which the subjective aspect of human relations like feelings, emotions, love, etc. become objectified or reified in a capitalist world. So in Lucas's discussion of reification, we can find the influence of both Hegel and Marx. Hegel, in his philosophy of right, long before in the beginning of 19th century, predicted the thingification of human being in the globalized world. And he clearly mentioned that this particular thingification would result in alienation of the working class. So Lucas builds his argument of reification on this particular concept of Hegel and amalgamates this with Marx's commodity fetishism. So we can also understand the idea of reification through the Frankfurt School's concept of forgetting. In their dialectic of enlightenment, Marx Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno states, all reification is forgetting. Here, forgetting refers to the act of ignoring the human labor. Lucas and Hegel describes the proletarian class as the subject and object of history. They are the creator of the universe, but it is the bourgeoisie class that constantly ignore the contribution of the proletariat, and by reifying them, they make them forget about their own ability to. So now let's understand how reification leads to non-recognition of the proletariats. Reification results in the inception of two kinds of non-recognition. First, it creates non-recognition of the self. And secondly, it culminates in non-recognition of the proletariat class by the capitalist class. So in the first case, due to the constant objectification, the proletariat fails to recognize his true potential. He is unable to identify himself as the subject object of history. Instead, he only thinks himself as an object. This particular tendency suppresses the revolutionary tendency of the working class, and using this vulnerability, the capitalists further objectify them. In the second case, the capitalist class considers itself as the only class which possesses consciousness, an object is basically something which does not have consciousness, and by not recognizing the working class as a class having consciousness, it reifies the entire proletariat class. So this particular master-slave dialectic is the prominent reason behind the inception of non-recognition in the capitalist society. Now, let's have a look at how the concept of reification and non-recognition are evident in amnesty, and how the interplay between this particular concept results in the eternal reification of the characters, and how the characters fight, how they struggle to eradicate this evils of capitalism, and how they eventually achieve freedom. So, Amnesty is a 2020 novel in which Adiga depicts the predicament of a 19 years old illegal immigrant from Sri Lanka who finds himself in a complex situation in Australia. Through the course of 24 hours, we encounter um, through him the cruelty and brutality of the Australian society. We learn how globalization can be a dark factor too. So in this novel, the protagonist Dhananjay Rajaratnam witnesses a murder of his employer Radha Thomas by another man of Indian origin called Dr. Prakash. So during these 24 hours, Danny roams around the street of Sydney and ruminates whether he should reveal the secret and simultaneously also risk detention or keep silence. And so, through Denny, we experience how immigrants are treated as objects and how they become victims of intolerance. The Australians constantly questions the overall appearance of Denny, his brown skin, the Tamil flavored accent, and even his eating style. So, to get recognition from the Aussies, Denny eventually compromises with his Sri Lankan identity and start mimicking the Aussies. He changes his hair color, walking style, gestures, and even his accent. So the non-recognition by the Australians compels him to abandon his own identity, and he becomes something else. So this particular something else is the example of objectification. So an object, as I have already mentioned, is something that lies outside the individual. So by becoming what he is not in reality, any is becoming an object in the globalized world of Sydney. So, in this way, globalization has been depicted in the novel in both good and bad context. We see the amalgamation of people from all part of the world in Sydney, and through this particular amalgamation, we get the vibe of a possible community living. But the way Adiga describes the attitude of the host nation towards these people, our hope dismantles. There is an instance from the novel where a friend of Dhananjay Rajaratnam, a nameless illegal immigrant from China, he tells his own experience when he was working as a laborer in some orange garden, and the owner of this orange garden, he basically brings the illegal immigrants from all over the world to work in his garden, and at the payday he invites the police. So basically this event describes how the people of Australia, basically the capitalist class, how they are interested only in the labor power of the working class, and the other factors, other human attributes about the working class, they simply ignored this. So in this novel, we also encounter the idea of forced assimilation, and uh, forced assimilation has been depicted in a very interesting manner. Uh, I have already described how Denny, under the influence of uh, the Australian society, he changes his whole appearance, and his thinking also changes gradually. But at the end, we have Adiga depicts that uh, through exploration of his self, through exploration of his own consciousness, Denny at the end realizes that he is not an Australian. He's a Sri Lankan. He's a member of the Sri Lanka. His identity is basically Sri Lankan. So this particular realization um, prevents Denny from becoming fully reified, and at the end he realizes his true self. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Venkateshwaram. So, well, you have, beautifully given just an overview and beautifully presented the class system, from Max Horkheimer to Theodore Adorno, where we can see, the cultural insight in the novel, be it Immensity, or let us say the White Tiger. So we can see, how he's been giving voice to the popular as a kind of political idea conveyed in his novels. So just a little bit, I'm a little bit intrigued by the idea where Adiga talks about, diasporic, you can say, double diaspora, which is, to some extent, is trying to intrigue us from the class struggle. So is it right to, look class struggle as well as, the diasporic invasion on both the popular as well as the cultural side? So is it possible to see both working together? Means the class struggle as well as, diasporic trauma, are they working together, or how do you see it through the site, through this novel? So I'm a little bit intrigued on that fact.
Yes, sir. This is a very nice point. The point which you make about the double diasporic element in Amnesty. This particular element is very evident in this novel because when this particular character arrives to Australia, he sees other brown people, and he kind of becomes skeptical towards them. He doesn't like their presence in the Australian society. So at the one hand, his struggle is with the Australians, which we can term as class struggle, and on the other hand, he's also struggling with his fellow illegal immigrants or other migrants from other parts of the world. So I think these two struggles are simultaneously depicted in this novel, but in White Tiger, I think this was majorly about class struggle. The element of this diasporic, this was not there. So this is my understanding.
Mhm. Right. So because these both the things, diasporic trauma as well as class struggle, they go hand in hand when we talk about MST, right? So that is that
Yes.
is where we just have to little bit take a closer look on, right? So anyway, that was wonderful insight by you. And now I invite questions on all the papers. So if anyone has a question, or and I would also look upon if the first presenter. Do we have the first presenter now? There, Muhammad Yassin Om. It was beautiful paper he had written, but I'm not sure why didn't he join. So he should have joined. Anyways, is he present or not? No? All right, so we can invite the questions. Do we have any question from all the presenters? Yes? No? Maybe? No? All right. So with this, I would just like to conclude. We just went through the beautiful papers, and the first paper was read by the speaker, and he gave insight on the comparison between the historical perspective of uh, of Ras Leela and its dimension, and how does it affect through the 20th century. And I was just willing to know about the cultural as well as the aesthetic, the Indian aesthetic insight through which Ras Leela is depicted by, let us say, Bharat Muni, right? And how we can see it by using that touch of Indian aesthetics. So I was just willing to know. Anyway, we lost the connection with the first speaker, and later on we just went on the another interesting paper where we just heard about the cultural memory, and how does the novel which the speaker presented there, and how it talks about the memory and the culture and partition trauma, which you cannot leave behind, so you have to go together with the historical perspective laid on on the idea by using her paper. She also gave insight on the idea conveyed by Khushwant Singh, right? And lastly, we had a paper which is by the last speaker. So he also gave a wonderful insight on the forced assimilation, as well as how we can see the class struggle seen from the diasporic tradition, as well as uh, so we just all together came to the conclusion that it is the exchange of ideas which can be making this platform beautiful. So I thank Dr. Shalja Vasudeva, who gave me opportunity to chair this session, and I just congratulate all the speakers, all the presenters for their wonderful presentation. So with this, I just thank everyone. So thank you very much. Thank you.